And then having the men in the meeting go, why is she sitting on the main table? That's where like the men sit. And then having the women think, oh, who does she think she is sitting at the table? When did we ever talk about that kind of stuff at work? It was always emotions don't belong in the workplace. Well, you know what? We're humans. Emotions are where we are. Those 4 words. It took me a long time in my career, 30 some years, to understand that I was about those 4 words.
This is An Empire. Stories of exceptional Arabs around the world and their journey to the top. I want to start, though, Maha, at the very beginning and talk a little bit about your background. You are from an Egyptian family, but grew up mostly in a small town in Minnesota. Is that right?
Yeah. So I am born and raised in Mankato, Minnesota, which is a very small town. It was the home of Laura Ingalls Wilder on Little House on the Prairie. You can't get more middle America than that. But I'm 100% Egyptian, Masriya, 100%. Both my mom and dad, they passed away, but they're both Egyptian. And I'm really proud to be from Egypt. And I spent the early part of my life in the US and then the second half of my life overseas in Egypt and in Dubai.
What was it like growing up, being fully Egyptian, having Egyptian parents in a small town in America?
I mean, it was different. Like I was the poster child for cultural diversity. There weren't any African-American kids, Asian kids in my school. I had dark skin, dark hair. My name is Maha Abouelenein. It's a very hard 11 letters, name that I have. I didn't really, have a lot of people who the internet didn't really exist when I was growing up. So people didn't know what Egypt was besides camels and the desert. And, they didn't know what Islam was. They didn't know what Ramadan was. Obviously, when time changed and things became more open and the internet had a free access of information, people knew a lot about my culture and where I came from. But, I had a great childhood. My parents did a very good job of within the 4 walls of our house. It was Egypt, like the food, the rules, the religion, the traditions, the music, Kulthum, Abd al-Halim. But once we opened that door, you were in America. And so American, baseball, soccer games, all the American things that you would traditionally see. Like I experienced all of that. And I had a really fortunate childhood. My parents really did a good job of making us aware of our culture and where we came from. And I got the best of both worlds.
What was, when you were younger, what were the, like in every family, people are always like, oh, Maha was this when she was young, or there's always like that, your own reputation. And what was it like as a child?
I was the spunky one. I was the outgoing one. I was the attention seeker, outgoing, extroverted child for sure. I was always the one doing shenanigans on family vacations. I was always practicing my live stand-up at the pyramids as a reporter. I was always an ambitious performer and outgoing. My sister was very conservative and, she was the good student and I was the more got into trouble, gave my parents all their gray hair type of child.
And then eventually you moved to Egypt.
I did.
In 97, I think. And What was that like?
I mean, it was interesting. Like I had lived in the US my whole life. I was born, raised in the US. I went to school. I had friends. I had a job. It was where I knew. And, I did spend a lot of time going to Egypt. Every summer, my parents would take us to Egypt. On Christmas vacations, we would go to Egypt. So I did have a lot of experience in going to Egypt, but it's different to go someplace on vacation versus actually living there. And so when I moved to Egypt in 97, I was 27 years old. I was a professional. I wasn't in high school or college where I had like a shilla or a group of friends that I would hang out with. I went as an adult. And so going as an adult is a different challenge because you have to find your friends. You have to find your work. You have to find your own routine. And for me, my Arabic was okay, but I wasn't fluent in Arabic. I didn't, really know much about how to navigate living in a country versus going on vacation. All the things you have to do when you live somewhere. You buy groceries, you have bills, you have things you need to do. And so it was a transition. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't that easy, but I really relied on the values values of how I grew up, of like, lean in, get to know people, listen, be part of the culture, ask a lot of questions, build relationships, and grow from there. And that's pretty much what I did.
That's really, yeah, impressive. But so Maha, I want to transition a little bit to your career because I want to make sure that we have enough. It's really vast, and I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about it. But one of the things that a lot of people always wonder is like, how did you get that first gig, the one that really, kind of changed the course or at least shifted the course of your career? And I wonder if you could talk about, that first job that really meant something to you, and yeah, maybe changed the course of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I had that moment where one thing happened, it changed the trajectory of my career and me as a person forever. I moved to Egypt in 1997. Like I said, I didn't have a job. I got to Egypt, and it's at that point you either worked for a multinational like a Unilever, a P&G, a Coca-Cola, a Henkel, like a multinational company that had offices in Egypt, or you worked for a family business, a Swede family, the Sawiris family, the Mansour family. There were three kind of icons at the time. And so I'd never worked for a family business before or a family conglomerate of companies. I came from General Mills. I came from a multinational in the US, a mega consumer products giant company. And so I kind of, lended myself more to working for one of those companies because I came from that sort of corporate environment in the US. And I interviewed with some of these companies and didn't really find the right role. And I ended up meeting with the family business, the Sawiris family. And I got a job working for Naguib Sawiris. He offered me a job as his office manager. For those of you who don't know Naguib Sawiris, he's one of the billionaire icons of the Middle East. He's a gentleman who has changed the trajectory of a lot of business landscape in Egypt and the Middle East. At the time, he was had a technology company where he had licenses for HP and Cisco to sell and distribute routers and printers. He had a tech company essentially, and offered me to be his office manager for a new company that he was building, which was Orascom Telecom, where he ended up launching almost every mobile network in the Middle East and North Africa, which was like when cell phones were introduced, pretty much. I was at the front seat. He offered me to be his office manager, and I had thought that was a role that I was overqualified for. I went home that night to my dad, and I'm like, Dad, he offered me to be his office manager. Was an executive working at General Mills. I have my master's degree. I'm like 27. I'm too overqualified for this role, and I really thought that the role was too junior or beneath me at the time. And my dad was like, listen, you just moved here. You don't know anybody. When you get to work for someone and be close to the sun, to the chairman of a company, you will learn so much. Think of an office manager as a chief of staff. And he's like, you go back tomorrow and you accept that job. And I don't really care how much they offer you. You're going to take it, and you're going to learn, and you're going to grow, and you're going to put your head down and do the work. And if you go in and learn the business and learn what he needs, then you'll learn how to add value to him. Then you'll know what the company's all about. Then you can make your asks. But you have to put the work in first. You have to accept a role that you probably don't think you should take, because it's going to be a good way for you to learn. And much to my chagrin, I went back the next day. I took the job, and it was the best thing that happened to me. Becoming the office manager for a chairman of a company was the best learning ground for me. I learned about him. I learned about a business. I learned about the ins and outs of the operations. And then I started to be able to okay, I'm going to add a little suggestion here, or let me give Naguib a couple of my ideas now that I had confidence that I knew what the company is about, and see if he likes any of my ideas. So I really started to accept the situation I was in, put my head down, put in the work, and then I started to add value once I knew how I could actually bring value to him. And I started to give suggestions that he took. And I built a wonderful career working for him. I had like 4 business cards when I worked at his company because I was his office manager. Then I went to the head of marketing communications. Then I was the head of investor relations. Then I worked on the commercial team. I ended up launching almost all of his mobile networks. I traveled all over Africa. I did due diligence for him to acquire a big telecom operator in Africa. I was one of 3 people that went on the roadshow with Naguib globally to sell it into institutional investors. Like, never in my life would I have gotten that experience had I not decided to take the job to be his office manager.
That is wild. And it's such a lesson, I think, also in humility in some ways,
Yeah, 100%. Like,
yeah.
just don't think you're above anything. Like, if it's a chance for you to get in
Yeah.
and learn, you got to do it. And I actually I was wrong. I was like, oh, it's beneath me, or I have a master's degree. Like, doesn't matter. Experience is experience. Putting in the hard work is about putting in the hard work. There are no shortcuts to how you can get to where you need to grow. I just saw Naguib on Sunday. I was in Egypt, and I still have a very good relationship with him. And we do business together till this day. I mean, that was 1997. This is 2023 because I put my heart into the work. I was loyal to him. I understood what mattered to him. And I kept a very good relationship with him throughout these years. And I do business with him today.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible. And also, like, I think one thing that I think maybe a lot of Arab dads feel, but it's like, it's also the experience. Like, working is about sure money, but also it's about what can you learn? Like, I remember my dad would always say, like, jobs should be about what you're learning rather than so much about like how much you're getting. Yeah.
My dad had foresight that I didn't have. My dad had insight of like, go in and find how you can create value once you know. Like, sometimes you don't know. Like, maybe I would have accepted a job for him in the company that wasn't an office manager, but I wouldn't know how to do it because I didn't know anything about the business. And then I had a very good seat at the table to learn about that. And I think I encourage anyone, if you get a chance to be an assistant, an admin, an office manager for someone who's high profile or in a senior position, take it. Because what you will learn in that journey, that's carried me till today. Like, being close to the son really helped me. How does he operate in meetings? How does he make decisions? How does he handle people? How do you manage a company of that scale? Because now I'm managing a company. I have 8 employees or so. I can't imagine running a company with 10,000 people. Like, how do you do that? And I really got to see how he, was doing it, and he was building new technology that no one really understood. Like, when he said, "المحمول في قد الجميع," when he said, "I'm going to put a mobile in every phone and a mobile phone in everyone's hand," it's like when Bill Gates said, "I'm going to put a laptop in everyone's home." Everyone's like, "What do we need computers in our homes for?" He just had the vision to see that mobiles were going to be the gateway for entrepreneurs, for e-commerce, for connectivity, for families, for everything. And obviously, a lot of business is built on mobile now, and social is built on mobile, and e-commerce is built on mobile. And the fact that he built all those networks to create that opportunity and that economic power for people, he is one of the godfathers of the industry.
Yeah. I wonder, Maha, how much of your experience working at a corporate like General Mills and also just growing up in the States, how much of that was brought into your work, working, in Egypt and really excelling at your role?
I mean, it's a big part of the work ethic, right? I can't deny the American culture for business and work ethic. It really was ingrained in me from the very beginning. And when I moved to Egypt, I realized how different business is in the Middle East versus the US. So, US is all about results, get down to business, deliverables, time is everything, time is money. That's what they teach you. Like, you just have to be really efficient and productive and get to the bottom line. In the Middle East, when I moved there, I learned it's those things, but second. First comes the human. Build the relationship. All business is personal. Ask about their kids. Have tea. Take time. Slow down. Like I was like very American style, let's get down to business. And then everyone's like, hey, girl, that's not going to work here. You got to like take down that American tone and really settle into the culture and the people and build relations. And I really love that about the culture of the Middle East. And then I started to figure out, hey, if I can make my superpower how to bridge the gap between what people in the US want to learn about the Middle East and how people in the Middle East want to learn about the US. And maybe that can be my secret sauce in my DNA and help build those bridges, because I had to build those bridges. And I don't want other people coming in to do business in the Middle East make the same mistakes I made of like going first and going for the business and closing the deal. Actually, it's not. It's relationships, it's time, it's effort, it's energy of really being personal and getting to know them. And I really value the upbringing I had in the US because it gave me good business acumen, good business skills. But then I'm all about the personal business and really building relationships for the long term.
Yeah. And when you were in Egypt, like I wonder like on a day to day, what were some of the I guess like, like the minuscule skills or things that you learn to do, like for on a very, when you talk about like ethics in business or business
Yep.
acumen or being personal, what does that mean on a day to day? And how were you able to like grow in the way you did being office manager without, ever be coming off as like, I don't know, like cocky or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
what are the day to day skills that people can take away from that experience?
I mean, I failed a lot. Like, I'll be honest with you, I had to learn by failing. Like, oh, you don't do that here. Okay,
Yeah.
learn to that. I had a gentleman. I joined the American Chamber of Commerce when I went to Egypt because I really wanted to be a part of the business network. And being part of the AmCham, there was only two women like in the group and that were in the delegations that were active in they have this thing called this door knock where they go to Washington and they take a bunch of business people from Egypt to go to the capital and talk to them about doing business in Egypt. And the delegation was all men and just two women. And I learned a lot about that process, like the day to day, how do women operate in the Middle East in business? And, at the time there was like one CEO of a company that I knew that was a female. And so all the day to day stuff was like, okay, when we go to a meeting room, I want to sit at the table. I don't want to sit on the back chairs. And then having the men in the meeting go, why is she sitting on the main table? That's where like the men sit. And then having the women think, oh, who does she think she is sitting at the table? And so I think that kind of stuff I had to like work on, like, and then I would encourage other women to come sit next to me and encourage them to like take a seat at the table and like, yeah, we should be here to contribute. Like, I think they should hear from us and like, we shouldn't take the back seat. So that was like a big day-to-day thing that I had to face, is like how to make sure that you were blending and fitting in, but also not shying away from like sharing your voice, sharing your opinions, sharing your ideas. So just finding that delicate balance of not being too much, but just also like really observing how the culture and the norms operate and respecting them, like really making sure that you're respecting that's their book of rules of how they operate and you need to fit in. Don't stand out when it comes to that. So I think that was another like a big takeaway. Another one is like hiring people. A lot of people in the Middle East will recommend you their relatives and friends to hire them for roles. And they think your network is basically friends and family that you can hire for different jobs. And so, in the US, the culture is very different. You have to be qualified for that role. You have to apply for that role. You have to have the right specifications that are required. So that was always an awkward situation for me when I ended up running my own business in Egypt of like, you don't want to turn people down, but you can't just hire friends and family. You have to build a business based on who's qualified for what roles. I think that was a big challenge for me, is like, how do you say no? Or how do you delicately not take their relative or their family member, especially if it's like a business or a client and they I want you to take my daughter to work in your company. And what I would do in those situations is I was try to find a good balance. Like, could we let them come in and do a training or like come as an intern or find them a role that would be best suited for them or work on better timing because the timing wasn't going to work for us. So you don't want to turn them down, but at the same time, you also need to uphold the value of the cultures of your organization. So other people that had to, fight to get the job or apply for the job through normal routes didn't feel like someone was getting a shortcut in the back door. And so just making sure that you kept consistent with your values and how you operate so that people could respect that there's a system and, we like to be a part of it, but we need to make sure that we respect that's how we're going to manage the company.
Yeah, it's such a fine line between those personal relations and the business. It's
It
so
happens.
hard to watch.
It happens. It happens. And it's a Middle East thing. It's like you really don't want to disappoint somebody. And so you don't want to say, like, as somebody asked me last week, they're like, oh, my friend, she's going to use a job. Can you give her a job? I'm like, I don't have any openings, but I can try to introduce her to some people who might.
Yeah. Was that always, it sounds like even when you say like, oh, I invited other women to sit next to me on the table, it sounds like you always had this, I guess, value system of lifting others around you as well. And obviously as a woman working in the Middle East, especially on such a high level, I'm sure that was challenging in and of itself, but to also make the effort to bring other people up along with you.
Honestly, I get
is that
this
something you always
question.
had?
Yeah, I get this question a lot of like, what's it like being a female entrepreneur in the Middle East? And I'm like, it's no different than being a female entrepreneur in the US. Like, we're underfunded. We aren't getting enough of the funding that goes to the share lines of projects that are funded by or created or co-funded by men. But it is different in the Middle East because, I mean, today is so much different than I was doing it in like 2000. That's 23, 25 years ago, where it wasn't the norm that women had traditional roles. Like they had to take marketing jobs or communications jobs or work, your parents want you to be a doctor or a lawyer. Parents didn't want to hear their kids coming home saying, we're going to be a content creator and make content on the internet. And that's our job. Like, I'm going to go like leave my education that I got and go to build a startup and make coffee. Like, parents didn't want to hear that. So I think, it's changed tremendously now. I think the entrepreneurial scene in the Middle East is booming and a lot of people are excited about the content and the creative work that's coming out of the Middle East and the businesses that are thriving globally. So I think obviously the context has changed quite a bit, but in my role, I really love to help inspire women, empower women, really spent time in my jobs. Like my company today is all women. It wasn't by design. It just happened that they were the most qualified people. In fact, now we're trying to actively recruit some men into the team. But we really, really believe, like even back when I was in my early days in Egypt, that, women have a voice. They want to use it. Now they have the platforms to do it. And it hasn't been an easy road for them. They have to be mothers. They have to balance family. They have to take care of their parents. Like a big part of the culture and even my upbringing was taking care of both of my parents. And it's something that in the Middle East, we value and we care a lot about. And so we do it all. And I think that's no different than any other women in any other markets around the world. They do have to balance family commitments, personal commitments, and their own ambitions. And I really try to mentor a lot of female startups and co-founders to help them tell their stories, build their personal brands, and to stand up for themselves. And also, I mean, I just posted yesterday, like I took a 2-week business trip and I'm like, I'm taking a couple days off. Like I need to regroup. I need to relax my brain because I was working so much and talking so much. So you have to find the balance that's right for you. And hopefully I'll inspire and empower women to do the same.
Yeah, I think you already are. So I want to talk about this first consultancy company that you started. So can you talk about the decision to start, your own company? I think it was called Organizational Consultants.
Yep.
And what did that like? Can you talk about the inception of the idea? Talk about the inception of the idea all the way to actually saying, okay, I have started this company.
Yeah. So self-awareness is a really important thing. Understanding what you can and can't do, understanding what you're good at and you're not good at. I realized I am not good at working at companies. I was working at General Mills and I did okay there. I was very successful in my roles, but it wasn't me. And I worked at Google. I was an employee at Google for 4 years or almost 4 years as the head of comms and public policy at Google. Like, I'm not a corporate girl. So, my first entry into becoming an entrepreneur was self awareness that I'm not a corporate girl. So I decided after I was working with Naguib and his company, I'm like, you know what I really want to do is go back to doing communications. That's the love of my life. That's what I love to do. That's my happy place. And I started my company in 2004 called Organizational Consultants, which is the company I still have today. The brand Digital and Savvy is just a consumer brand, but my legal company is Organizational Consultants. And the reason I started the company was I just wanted to control what I did every day. I wanted to choose the projects I could work on. I wanted to see where I could give the most value for people. I had worked for Coca-Cola for almost 10 years as a client, and I'm thinking a lot of people can serve Coca-Cola. What am I actually uniquely qualified to help companies do? And how can I go do that? Like, how can I build a specialty kind of organization that helps find my DNA coming to life and then serve people? And Organizational Consultants is a name of a company that my dad had in the US. He was consulting for family businesses, and my father passed away. And months after he passed away is when I started the company, and I kept the name because it meant something to me. It doesn't mean anything to anyone else but me. And thank you. And I really that's how I wanted to keep sort of him with me and part of my story. And so much of what I've learned and so much of who I am is because of my dad. And so that was sort of my ode and my nod to him. Like, I'm going to keep this company, even though it's a kind of a very corporate name. And eventually, like a couple years ago, we shifted and we came up with the consumer brand name of Digital and Savvy. But I started the company because I just wanted to control what I worked on and where I could actually add value to people. And I started with my DNA. I started with how can I help companies in the US understand the Middle East market? And how can I help companies in the Middle East understand the US market? And that was what was unique to me. Anybody can do press releases or organize press conferences. Anyone, there's a lot of qualified people in the market that can do that. But I felt, what am I a value creator? What can I create for other people that's valuable? And that's my understanding of both markets. And how can I make a business helping businesses communicate really well and understand how to win?
And did you did you already have like a network and clientele that wanted to work with you? Like, how did you just start even making making money?
Yeah, it's hard. It was really hard. It's really hard. It's like just doing a lot of door knocking. It's telling people I have my own consulting firm now. I'm helping people do strategic communications. And then once you land that first client, then you actually have to start delivering. And then it's like, oh, I need help. I need to hire somebody. And then the whole process of being an entrepreneur, which every entrepreneur faces, is like, how do you add more people without getting the business? So you get the business, then you have to get the employees to help serve that cycle of the chicken and the egg. Like, do we hire the people and then get the business? Or do we get the business and then hire the people? So like, how do you scale your business? Those growing pains of like, I'm the accountant, I'm the HR, I'm the office manager, I'm the lawyer, I'm looking over the agreements. I'm every role until I can really scale my company by having more clients and more people. And it's a pain point that every business faces is, when do you hire and when do you take on those expenses? So you try to close the gap so that you're not having a lot of overheads or company expenses of payroll and staff without having the income to cover it. So that's kind of how I started organically, word of mouth, telling people it's on the market, knocking on a lot of doors, doing a lot of presentations, explaining what services I offer, explaining how I can help their companies in business. And I tried to go slow because I was afraid to take on too much too fast and not be able to deliver. And your reputation is how you deliver the results, right? So do one, get some reps, get some learning. Do a second, get some reps, get some learning. And then I had this fear when I sat in my office and I looked outside my office and I had like a bunch of employees. I'm like, I'm the boss. Like they expect me to walk in here and they're going to ask me questions. I need to know the answers. Cause I remember when I was working at a company and you'd go to your manager when you had a problem or you needed help with something. I'm like, what if they come to me and I don't know the answer? What if they like expect me to have knowledge and expertise and I don't know? And then you know what? You do know. You do know. You got to trust yourself. You have to trust your gut. The reason you're in that position is you have experience. You just need to like believe in yourself a little bit extra. And, you find the answers. And somehow when they would come into my office and ask me a question, I knew the answer. And then I got confidence. I'm like, hey, I kind of know what I'm doing here. And then whenever we would meet with clients and we knew the answers, that was also like exciting that we were like actually bringing value to people and solving problems. And then it just grew from there. And I started my company in Egypt. I was in Egypt for 7-8 years before I expanded into Dubai. And now I'm in the US.
Amazing. Maha, I wonder if you're comfortable also talking about like the finances of it. Like, did you have savings ahead of starting your company? And what were, no?
Nothing,
Okay.
Nothing. So I started my company in the conference room of one of my friends' companies. I was like, Haitham, I want to start a business, but I can't afford an office space. I just need someplace to come and work. And I'm going to bring this other woman on my team. Her name was also Maha. I'm like, it's just two people with our laptops. We're just going to sit in the conference room. Whenever you get a client and you need the meeting room, we'll just go downstairs to like a coffee shop or something. We just need to, we bootstrapped it. Like I was like, okay, Maha, we're going to get this one client. I'm going to pay you. I'm going to like payroll will never be late, but you just have to just like trust me that I'm going to pay you. And I just started, I didn't pay myself. I just paid her. I took the client's money. I paid her to help me. And we started in my friend's conference room. And then then we got a second person, then we got a third person. He's like, hey, it seems like you were like a lot of people in my meeting room. I think you need to get your own space. And I'm like, actually, we ended up getting the apartment upstairs from his office. And Haitham Hashed gave me my first kind of start and helped me like with the expenses. And then it's like, you have to have a printer and then you have to like, run and do things. So then he really helped me a lot in the beginning of my journey and said, okay, I'll take you in. And he's a great guy. And I ended up building my business from there.
Amazing. And can you talk to me about that first client and then how you also, I mean, at the moment you have massive clients, like I'm obsessed with Gary V, love him, obviously Karen Wazen. These are huge
Big
global names.
Yeah.
Huge clients. So who was your first client, if you're comfortable sharing? And then how do you even like get to that level? Like, how do you even meet someone like Gary V? Those kinds of, if you can talk about the progression.
Yeah, I have to go back and look and see. I think my first client in my company was Coca-Cola. They ended up doing work with me and I stayed with them for a long time. I had a really good relationship with the client. And so he knew who I was and we had spent some time together through the AmCham. And so we ended up working together very closely. But I also worked with a lot of big US companies that were coming into the region. So Coca-Cola, General Mills, General Motors. I helped Vodafone in the UK come into the Middle East market. Hilton, some hotel chains. Like I worked for a lot of corporate clients in the beginning of my career. And I also did a lot of public affairs. So public affairs is helping governments. So I went and worked for the Prime Minister of Egypt and I served a couple of different governments because I felt governments like companies should know how to communicate. And when I went to the Egyptian government, of course, I'm very American. I look Egyptian, I sound Egyptian, I speak Egyptian, but like my whole style was like very much the minute I would open my mouth, they're like, oh, your English is so good. Like you have an American accent. But I had been like a news junkie. I used to watch a lot of like The West Wing and a lot of like American television shows. And so I saw a lot about how governments were like talking at the White House. And I liked watching those type of shows. And when I went to the Egyptian government, I was like, you should have spokespeople. And they're like, what? We're like, every ministry should have a spokesperson, and you should be putting out communications about the projects you're doing, the policies you're implementing, start to communicate with the public. And then I said, okay, the prime minister does like these cabinet meetings. You guys should be more transparent. You should put these cabinet meetings on the internet. And they were like, what? I'm like, yeah, you should publish the minutes of the meeting. The prime minister should create a website, and he should put his policies, who's the members of the cabinet, what kind of projects you guys are working on. Like anytime you do like signings or declarations, you should take those videos and photos and put them on a website. And then they ended up doing daily press briefings, like the White House does a daily press briefing. So then the prime minister's office had like a spokesperson who went out every day and did a daily press briefing. And I wasn't involved in the content or what they were doing, but I thought I was pushing boundaries with them. But they were so open to doing all of it, and creating a website to talk about all their projects and put the minutes of meeting. I was just floored that they did it, and they still do it till today. And that's something that I instituted
Incredible.
more than 20 some years ago. Yeah.
That is wild. It must have taken also like a ton of confidence, I'll say, to
I
like
had no
go
fear.
to.
I had no fear. I was like, I'm just going
Where
to say
did this
it.
no fear come from?
I was just going to say it.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I just knew, because I had this American thing in me. So like, I was just going to come up with these ideas, and if they don't take them, what the worst they were going to say was, no, we don't want to do that. I ended up writing speeches for the prime minister, and I hadn't met him before. And so they said, well, he wants you to write the speech he's giving for Davos for the World Economic Forum. And I'm like, I've never met the prime minister, so I don't know how to write for somebody I've never met. Like, what's his tone? What's his tenor? What's his language? And I really just said to myself, what would I want to hear if I was sitting in the audience? And then it just flowed, and it came out, and I sent it to them, and they liked it. And I was like, oh, okay, this is fun. I'd never done that before. Like, I don't know how I was, building speeches for the prime minister of Egypt, but it was extraordinary. It was a privilege for me, and it was like really fun actually to learn how government works and how they do speeches and how they put out policies. And so it was a good experience for me.
That's incredible. And you had gotten your foot in the door with the Egyptian government just by nature of your previous work in Egypt and just kind of having a sort of network and
I had to think for a second.
Word of mouth.
So how I got to work with the Egyptian government, I was a member of the American Chamber of Commerce, and the AmCham does this thing called the annual door knock to Washington, D.C., where they go to Washington and they promote Egypt, and they say why you should do business with Egypt, and they talk about Egyptian policies. So before we go on this door knock visit, this delegation visit to Washington, you go meet with the government and have meetings with them so they can brief you. Ministry of Economy has these things going on. The Ministry of Investment has these things going on. And the final day, you go meet the whole delegation. There's like 30 of us, business people. Before we go to Washington, we go meet with the prime minister. And this is the craziest story. So we're in the cabinet. It's like a very opulent gold room, heads of state photos, big chairs. It's like a cabinet officials meeting. Like, it's just very official. And here I am, like there's another woman in me, and I'm just like sitting in the back, and I'm wearing like my Ann Taylor suit. I feel like really all confident. And at the end of the meeting, the meeting adjourns and everyone's leaving. And then at the end of the meeting, one of the gentlemen stands up and says, everyone's dismissed, but Maha, they'd like you to stay behind. The Secretary General of the Cabinet would like to talk to you. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Like, I was freaking out. I was like, what? Why did I get singled out? And then the minister, Mohammed Rashid, who's the Minister of Economy at the time, he said to me, he's like, it's fine. Just go wait in the salon. They're going to come get you. They want to talk to you. And I'm like, what do they want to talk to me about? Like, why am I the only one that got singled out? And I get in there, and they're like, oh, we've seen your work. We'd like you to do some work for us. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, how can I help? I was just flabbergasted. And they're like, we'd like you to write a speech for the prime minister. He's actually, he was going to Washington, D.C. So I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, so do you have some materials? You just want to send me a brief? Like, I didn't know. This is how American I was. It's like, do you just want to just send me a brief, or what do you? They're like, no, you need to come sit in our office and we'll get you the files, and you can't leave like the room, like you come into the meeting room and we bring you all the work. These are confidential, like classified government documents. So you need to sit in the room and work on the speech at our offices. I'm like, oh, okay, sounds good. And I just like, yeah. And basically, I ended up like helping them for this project. I would come like every day for days to help them because it wasn't like a 1 day job. And at the end of the thing, they said, we'd like to hire you. And I'm like, hire me. I have my own company. Like I have my own business. And they're like, yeah, why don't you be like our international communications advisor, write briefings for the prime minister, help him with his speeches, help us on foreign trips, help us understand, like be his briefer in chief. And like he would go to Davos and I have to explain to him, like, you're going to meet with Al Gore. Here's Al Gore's 1, 2, 3. Here's Thomas Friedman. Here's his 1, 2, like just making sure like he had understanding of the culture and what was happening. And, anyways, I ended up working for the government for a year. And at the end of the year, because I did the website and I did the spokesperson thing, I was like, this has been a great experience. Thank you very much. I really loved working with you guys. They're like, oh, we renewed your contract for another year. I'm like, what? And they're like, no, you're staying. And I'm like, well, I was just going to go back to my company. Like, they're like, no, we'd like you to stay. Like, they're really happy with you. And like, this is the government. And I went home and they're like, the government says you work, you don't say no. I'm like, okay. So anyways, I did that for several years until I finally said, actually, the woman who's running my business is on maternity leave and I need to go because she's having a baby and I need to go back to my company. So I finished my assignment with them. But, it was a really good experience. I really loved public policy. I liked understanding how government operates different than companies. And it gave me a good understanding and respect for what they do. And I ended up doing a lot of work with Sheikh Mohammed in Dubai and understood a lot from that experience on how the Prime Minister's office works. So it was a good training ground for me.
That's, it feels like in so many ways you've like had your foot in the private sector, in the public sector, in corporate and family business. Is there a world that you prefer? I love hearing you say that things were like fun for you. Has it always been fun? I mean, obviously maybe the corporate, you weren't a corporate girl, so that wasn't fun,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
It sounds like, yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you, we only have one life. We're only on this earth for so long. So why don't we spend it doing things we enjoy doing? And I failed a lot in my career. I got fired from jobs easily. I'm happy to admit that because things aren't always going to be a fit. But you learn from that and you learn like what you're good at, what you're not good at. You learn how to deal with people. You learn about hiring. You learn about all the mistakes are good lessons. And I don't have any regrets because I feel like those are the things that actually built my character, made me stronger, made me understand. And after I had my business in Egypt, I went into Google. I let someone run my business when I was working at Google. I came out of Google. And by that time, my company, I didn't have my office in Egypt anymore. And I went back just to being me. And in 2014, it was just me as a consultant. And when I finished my assignment at Google, Netflix said, why don't you come work for us? And I said, I don't want to be an employee, but I'll take you on as a client. And then they required more resources than just me. And so then I started building back up. I had a company. I kind of winded it down. I went into Google, became my own private consultant, just consultant of one. Then I started building up again a team. And, that's the ebbs and flow of entrepreneurship. It's not always going to be fun, but I'm trying to work on projects that make me happy. I'm trying to work on projects where I feel I can bring value. I sit in my career. I'm 53, where I can choose what I get to work on because I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and where I feel like me or my team member can bring the most value to other people. And I love what I do. I love what I do. And I'm really lucky that I found that I love what I do. And like that time of feeling in the newsroom when something would come in over the wire and we would have that information, we'd have to package the story before we broadcast it. Like that middle part of getting the information and sharing it with the world and telling that story that just like thrilled me to no end. And I started in the news business and then I ended up in the comms business, which is like the flip side. Instead of me reporting, I pitch to reporters and I tell other people's stories. And I worked in government. I worked in corporate. I do a lot of work now with personal brands and people.
Yeah,
because people follow people, they don't follow companies. And I really believe if
absolutely.
you're a startup, if you're an entrepreneur, invest in building your personal brand because people want to know about your story, your journey, how you built that. That's why people loved learning about and fascinated with Steve Jobs or Richard Branson. Like people want to know about the people that are building these incredible companies and products that we love. And so I think for me, it's great to see how the markets evolve too, that I have corporate clients, which I still do, and I have personal brands or people who are clients because I want to help these executives scale their stories, scale their ideas, build more connections, build more audiences, create, value for other people. And I am having fun and I'm hoping that, I'm teaching people along the way about like having a career is great, but bringing value to people is more important.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about this idea of someone's brand, and then also their reputation, which you work on a lot. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit about, the age that we're in. Obviously, social media and like reputation feels so fragile in so many ways. And yeah, and I'd love if you can give some advice for people, one on how to build their brand, but also how to protect it and how to protect their reputation in such a digital, wild, cancel-y culture age.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you said reputation is fragile because it is. We only have our names. We're only born with our names. We have to build and protect your name. And if I always think of reputation in terms of currency, what's its value? What's its worth? How do you spend it? How do you use it? We do live in an age of cancel culture. We also live in real time. But like, look at the oncoming onslaught of AI and deep fakes, and I could create my voice and image in through AI. Like, it's there's a lot to manage. Like, and you have to protect yourself and you have to think about your reputation. A lot of people have social media accounts and think that they're not personal brands. They are. Like, it's your reputation, how you look online. When you Google yourself, what do you find? Employers now Google their employees before they hire them. They check their LinkedIn, they check their social media posts. They're looking to see about their behavior, about their reputation, and it matters. It matters. You could have the best marketing in the world, the best sales team in the world, the best product in the world. But if you don't have a good reputation, you don't have anything to stand on. And I think, my dad did a really good job of teaching me about reputation long before people thought about reputation management. Like, a girl only has her name, a person only has their name. And how do you honor your name and care deeply about what your name means in the market and in the business world and with your family and with the office boy and with other people you work with and with your friends? Are you a good friend? Are you a loyal friend? Are you a dependable friend? Are you kind? I mean, emotional intelligence is a big part of reputation management. Like, how are you with empathy? How are you with kindness? How are you intuitive to how people think? I really believe because of the way the pandemic has changed our lives, even though we're not, in COVID anymore, or we're not in lockdown anymore, we will never be the same. The balance of power has shifted from the employer to the employee, right? The employee has an incredible amount of freedom now to do their jobs and have autonomy to do it. I'm not just competing. My reputation is not just competing with people in Minnesota. I'm competing with people around the world because my talent pool of competition has expanded because of the remote working environment. So I think people need to think about that. Like, the competitive nature of business means that you could be out of a job any minute now because you have to have a good reputation. You have to continue to add value. You have to bring relevance to people, and you really need to have the skills to survive in this market that's much, much different than it was a couple of years ago, even.
I love that you say kindness and I think and empathy and use these kinds of words that I honestly don't hear much in the business sense and feels like they're becoming increasingly important. Can you talk a little bit about kindness and empathy and the importance of that in your own personal brand, and also how you bring those values to your own clients. I mean, I would say when I watch Gary Vee, I love that he's always,
Talking
making
about it.
sure to talk about kindness and stuff like that. Is that something that you also bring to your clients?
Yeah, I mean, he rubs off on us a lot because we spend so much time with him. And he's one of the few business leaders that talks so much about these traits, kindness and empathy in the workplace. Like, when did we ever talk about that kind of stuff at work? It was always emotions don't belong in the workplace. Well, you know what? We're humans. Emotions are where we are, and that they do belong. Like, if people don't use their emotions, then how are they going to be passionate about something, right? So you need to think about how you can use your emotions to play to your strengths and to actually build bridges with other people. In the workplace, for me, I think with clients, we have to have a lot of empathy. We have to have a lot of empathy that clients are paying us fees to deliver results for them. So we can't just take people's money and assume that things will go the right way. We have to actually deliver. We have to have empathy for the fact that they are competing. They have a competitive marketplace as well. They have to make hard decisions on where they spend their budgets and time. So when we take their money and they pay us to help them, we have to take that very seriously. Kindness in the workplace is super, super important. I care more about how my team members treat each other first than they treat the clients or their partners or their vendors. Like, we really need to show up for each other first. And I think that's something I value deeply. And they know that because I talk a lot about it as well. And we spend a lot of time in our staff meetings talking a lot about what's happening in culture and listening to each other. Like, we want to observe and learn from everybody, even if everyone's different. Everyone has something to bring. And so I think, understanding the importance of emotional intelligence at work is what makes leaders and companies stand out.
Yeah. Maha, I wonder, you have offices in the States, you have offices in Dubai, you're constantly straddling between these two worlds that are also in your own DNA. Um, how do you, even on a day-to-day level, how do you balance between having such a global, uh, office space? Your office is the world in some ways,
Yeah.
and I wonder how you do it, even on a personal level, or day to day. Like, what are you eating for breakfast, or those kinds of
Yeah.
things of how you keep yourself sane.
It's actually, so I get up early, so that helps a lot with them working with the Middle East, so that I can get in a couple hours worth of work with the US, with the Middle East before they shut down. But it's all about planning, like really good planning and organization, thinking things through. What are deadlines I need to meet for people overseas? How do I be mindful of their schedules? How do I be mindful of, okay, if something's due on Thursday, I can't send it Wednesday night because they're going to, just making sure you think things through in terms of timing and scheduling, understanding time zones. And then I really plan my days. I always, like, Sunday nights before I start my work week on Monday, I put together all my priorities and thinking through so I can go to bed at night not thinking about my workload. I write everything down and I really plan. Like, I plan with my team. I plan kind of where I need to be blocking my day, allocating enough time. I do spend a lot of time. I was in Dubai in January. I just got back in March of doing a 2-week trip to Dubai, Saudi, and Egypt. So I just plan my trips in bundles of, like, making sure when I go, I can get multiple things done when I travel. I have a home in Egypt still. So it's so nice to go home and sleep in my bed and to see my family when I go home. So I try to make sure that I plan my trips properly, where I can do some personal things, see my friends, see my family, do a lot of business. And then I have a lot of friends in Dubai still. So trying to just making sure, like, before I go, plan my dinners, plan my breakfast, plan around my friends, because I do want to see them and I do want to make sure that those relationships are important to me. So I have a specific client that I don't work with anymore. I haven't worked with them for a couple of years, but every time I go, I see them, I make time. Like, I really plan my relationships. I plan who I'm going to spend time with, and I make sure I schedule them, because it's easy to get caught up in what you're doing and all this kind of stuff. And, like, people matter. And, like, even if I'm not working with this client, I still want to have a good relationship with them because there might be something in the future, or they might know somebody who might need something. So I do invest an extraordinary amount of time the minute I get on the ground. I'm fully booked. 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 11:30, 12, 4, 6, dinner. I get home like at 10 or 11. Then I might have to do calls with the US because it's only like 2 o'clock in the US. So usually I do calls at night. On this last trip, I reversed it. I did those in the morning, really early my time, evening for the US, just because I was running out of gas. But you just have to plan it. I just think you need to have really good organizational skills to do both cultures and both time zones, and just making sure I don't burn myself out and I don't take on more than I can manage. And I have a good team. I have a really good team. For me to leave my company for 2 weeks in the US and like me not attend any client calls or any meetings, it means that my team is fully capable, and I'm really grateful for them because they do have my back, and I see that, and the clients love them, and that just makes me even more happy.
Yeah, incredible. And did it take a long time to build that kind of team? Because one thing I always hear is
Yes.
talent is the hardest thing.
It's the
Yeah.
worst. It's the worst thing to manage. If you're not good at it, your whole business will implode. Like, people are everything. So trial and error, honestly, like, you hire people, you test them, you give them assignments, but sometimes it doesn't work out. And so you just have to like find the right fit. A lot of it is, how do you fit in with the culture? How do you fit in with the team? How do you fill in with like how we work? Some people are extraordinarily talented what they do, but they're not a good fit for us. And so how we work or our style. And so finding culture fits is hard. It's really hard. And so I'm always trying and always learning through the process of like how to be good at it. And it takes time, and it also depends on the other person that you bring on board, like how willing they are to adapt to the structure and the team, and what kind of effort they want to put in to fill gaps if they have them.
Yeah. And today I know that you're writing a book about your career and your life. Can you tell me a little bit about making that decision to write the book? Why did you want to do that?
I've wanted to write a book for like 10 years. And then last year I was like, enough about talking about it, actually do something about it. So I would like write on the plane. I would write here and there. Like, I have like chapters written and stories written out, but I didn't actually have like a structure or anything like that. So I was like, last year in July, I was like, stop talking about your dreams and go do them. And don't end this year, 2022, without having a game plan. So I'm like, okay, game plan. What do I need? I need an agent. I need a publisher. I need like an editor. What do you need to write a book? I have no idea. I got to start asking a lot of people. What do I need to do to write a book? Like, it's a process, right? First thing I learned is you have to write a book proposal. The book proposal is basically the outline of all the chapters and one full sample chapter, an overview about the book. What's your why? Why are you doing this? Who's your audience? Like, a lot of hard questions you got to answer. It's not just like, oh, everybody wants to write a book. Like, you got to have like meat on the bones. Then I talked to a couple authors. I'm like, okay, what's the process? What was it like? What advice do you have for me? You've done a book, so I need to know am I just like, is this like the worst process? Am I going to fail? So I said, okay. So anyways, last year I set a goal that I was going to get an agent. I was going to get an editor. I was going to get a book proposal done. And I really like asked around who could be my agent, who could be my agent. And then I knew that there was this one woman, she's like amazing. I'm like, oh, if I can get her, that would be like the dream agent. And they're like, oh, you have to convince her, like, because she's not easy to get and she's always busy. And I'm like, what if she doesn't like me? What if she doesn't like my idea? What if she doesn't? Because then I'll be out from day one. Like, I knew who I wanted to be my agent. And I was like, if I get her, this is going to be like the best. Because I want to have good people. Like, outcome aside, if I can just work with smart people that'll help me with the process, that's like good learning for me. Anyway, so I did. I got her. I couldn't believe I got her. And then she's like, there's this amazing editor, but like, I don't know if she's free. And I'm like, no, I want her. I interviewed like 8 people, and I went back to her. I'm like, no, I really want her. I really liked her. I really jived with her. And they're like, yeah, she's really expensive. She's not available. I'm like, well, we're going to wait. When she's available, we'll take her. Anyway, so I got my dream team, Nina and Michelle, my dream team. And actually we finished the book proposal, and stay tuned. Next year, there'll be a book coming out.
Amazing. Mabruk. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of reputation, Maha, you've been described as a boss lady, as a badass woman, as a Wonder Woman. How do you feel about these terms? And do you find them empowering? Or are you not into them?
Yeah. I mean, it's not that, but it's just like, I feel like, you know, the world girl boss or powerhouse. It's like, you know what? I'm just trying to make it out here. I'm just trying to do my job. I have a friend I haven't talked to in a long time. She's like, I'm so proud of you. You're doing so many amazing things and you're awesome. And I'm just following you on social and I'm just so inspired by what you're, I'm like, Dina, I'm just trying to like stay above water. I'm just trying to like make a difference. And, you know, I do love what I do. I do love my team. I love my company. I love my clients. Like I'm trying to make a difference. And I want to bring value to people. And several years ago, I sat down with myself to talk about like, what am I doing? Like, what's my legacy? What am I here on this planet to do? And what's my mission? Like, what am I going to say to my niece and nephew that Auntie Maha is really good at this? And this is what Auntie Maha did, because that's my compass is those kids. They're not kids anymore. They're young adults. And it was to help people communicate better. Those 4 words, it took me a long time in my career, 30 some years, to understand that I was about those 4 words, how help people communicate better. And if it's a company that wants to launch or a personal brand that wants to tell their story or a startup that wants to get someone to download their app or somebody who has a reputation problem in a crisis and needs to fix it, I'm going to help them communicate better. And that's what I love to do. And that's what if at the end of the day, if people say she's a girl boss because she helps people communicate better, or she's a powerhouse communications guru or whatever, I'm humbled by that and I'm touched by that. But I think like, did I have an impact? Did I do a good job? Was I a good daughter? Was I a good sister? Was I a fun aunt? Those are the things I measure myself by. And that's why actually I'm writing the book. I want people to have the principles that I had instilled in me and how they can scale and become a power networker or a super connector or get that big client like Gary V or get into work for Naguib Sawiris or land that dream job at Google. Like I had a fortunate career. I worked hard to get it. I worked hard to get there. I didn't just fall into all these roles. I didn't just go from Naguib and Gary and Google and Netflix. I didn't get there because I just decided to wake up one day and work for all these big companies and brands. I had to like earn it. I had to fail. I had to struggle. I had to really figure out like, what am I actually good at? And then do that. Because I realized I'm not good at a lot of stuff. I'm not. Like my sister is good at a lot of things. She's very good at a lot of things. I'm very good at a few things, but the few things I'm good at, I'm very good at those. Like I'm very good at strategy. I'm very good at strategy. I'm very good at finding your message. I'm very good at telling your story. I'm very good at getting you out of a crisis. You know, how am I running and operating a business? Okay, I'm doing it, but it's not like my thing. Like I'm not like, some people are operations gurus and like strive on the efficiency of a well-run machine. I'm not that person, but I'm getting by. I've had my company now for ages. So I think it's working out.
Yeah, I think so. I would say so too. But if you were to look back at that, spunky young Maha, if that girl kind of would see you today, what would you maybe tell her? And I think does she also like live inside you? What does she also tell you?
Yeah, I posted a photo of myself when I was like in the 4th grade on Instagram for International Women's Day. And I wrote a quote on it, something about like, keep going because you don't know who you're going to inspire and who's going to see your story and be moved by it. And if I had, and I didn't have a lot of female mentors and role models growing up. It was like my mom and my sister. And then when I became a professional, it was like we looked up to like a first lady or like, who was your mentor growing up? I got that question a lot. Who is your female role model? And it was always these people in power and positions or governments or first ladies. Queen Rania was always like, oh, she's elegant and smart and articulate and she's family. Like we didn't have role models. Like now there's like a million role models in the Middle East of females who are entrepreneurs and doing it all and ministers. And you don't just have to be in government power to be looked up to. And that's kind of the compass we had, or I had growing up. And so I think, I am just reflecting a little bit about me as a little girl. I had confidence for some reason of like, I could do anything. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to be. But I just had this, my dad, when I was very young, used to take me with him to a lot of his school functions. He was the dean of the business school and would put me in a huge room at a university function of like some fundraiser and just leave me in the room to wander and talk to strangers. And that just helped me have confidence and helped me like not be, I was like a 14, 15, 16-year-old going to like a business function. I had no business being there. But I went with my dad and he's like, come with me. And I learned how to network. I learned how to work a room. I learned how to talk to strangers. And that just gave me an extraordinary amount of confidence. And I always said to myself, if not me, who? Like, oh, why can't I do it? Why should I not be able to do this? And it's just something that I think a lot of women should just say to themselves, like, why can't you do it? Why wouldn't you be able to do it? If not you, then who? And I really believe that. I really believe that, like, why do some people get to do things that other people don't? Everybody has the equal opportunity to do it. You just need to believe in yourself and you need to like work hard to try to get it. If it's an opportunity you want, you don't know somebody that has that opportunity for you, go knock on that door until you find it. Go ask people, ask for help. A lot of people don't like to ask for help. A lot of people don't want to ask for help because they think it's a sign of weakness. Like, you know what? It's a sign of being resourceful. Go ask for help. I haven't taken any money for any of my companies. I haven't had an investor. Everyone always thinks, oh, did they give you money? I'm like, no, I never once asked him for a penny. Even when my father passed away, he's like, can I help you? And I'm like, nope, I'm good. I just I had that resilience of like, I got to figure it out for myself. And I have a very, very, very deep belief in self-reliance. Like you have to rely on yourself. Nobody at work is going to give you an opportunity. Step up to ask for it. Nobody in your family is going to do a favor for you. Ask for the help that you want. So self-reliance is a lot about relying on yourself to find the tools within yourself to do it because you have it. You just haven't tapped into it. Either you're afraid you're going to fail, so you don't do it. You're afraid what your friends are going to think, so you don't do it. But you have to learn the value of self-reliance. Look at today's marketplace. It's changing everything on its head. So you're going to have to know how to do things for yourself. You're going to have to know how to manage your own social media. You're going to have to know how to, step up for yourself, maybe a side hustle. You can get income from anywhere now. You don't need to just rely on your employer for that. So I think self-reliance is a big, big deal for me. It's a big part of my book that's coming out, is to talk about that, is to give people tools to manage for themselves, to build their own personal brands, to network, to create value for themselves and for others. But it starts with yourself.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to wrap up. Also, is there anything, Maha, that you want to say, or anything I didn't ask you that you think is important to know?
No, I love your questions, and I love, it's so easy to talk to you.
Oh, likewise. I feel really, really inspired. And it's truly such an honor to speak with you. And I cannot wait for your book. And yeah, I see, I'm listening to you, and I'm also taking it in for myself. And I hope other people listening also, do that. But you're speaking to me as well, and I'm listening. And
good.
There's so many things that I personally took away from this conversation. And so I can't thank you enough.